Hello everyone. I hope when you are watching this that you are doing good and you've had a great day. I want to spend just a few minutes on a short little lesson with you, and by starting out by turning to Hebrews chapter 9, verse 27. Hebrews 9:27 says, "It is appointed to man to die once, and after this the judgment." Some of you may be thinking I'm going to talk about reincarnation. No, I'm not, but this is a good verse to refute reincarnation, that's for sure. But what I want to talk about, something that every single one of you know is going to happen to you, and that is death. Every single one of us is going to die if the Lord doesn't come beforehand. And so the question, and what I want to spend a few minutes on today, is what do you want people to say about you at your funeral? Chuck's used examples before, or he's told me before in different times we've talked, that one of the best things to do when someone is up for an elder is to talk to the children. Talk to those who spend the most time with these men or with people. So, if you asked your kids, what would your kids genuinely, truly say at your funeral about you? Would they say, well, we never hardly saw Dad or Mom. They both were always working, just didn't get to spend much time with them? Or would they be able to say, my parents did everything they could to make sure they still worked, was with us kids, taught us responsibilities, taught us to be good Christians, everything that parents should do? Which one would they say? What would your spouse say about you? Would your spouse say, he or she was the best friend I ever had? Or would they have to say, well, I didn't really ever really know him or her. It's a shame, but I didn't really ever know them. And then another one is, what would your coworkers say? Would your coworkers say, well, we're sure going to miss him or her. They were an inspiration at the office, around people. What a great influence. Or would your coworkers say, and this is really sad, wow, after the funeral's over, say, I never even knew he went to church or she went to church. But to hear them talk, he or she was at church all the time. And that's a crying shame. I know I go to a lot of funerals, and I've seen some that it was just very, very sad. And I'm talking as the world would call a good person. Honest people, you could trust them with anything. Helped people all the time. One man in particular I'm thinking of, and I thought a lot of him. Went to his funeral, and it was as if they just picked someone up off the street that preached the funeral. The guy never knew him. It was really sad. The few minutes he could spend talking was just things the family had told him right before the funeral started, sounded to me like. And it was terrible. Another thing, I went to a funeral once, and about all they could say about this man was, well, he owned half the town. And he did. He was a very, very successful person. Is that what we want said about us at our funeral? Because in the end, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter how long you live on this earth. Look at Methuselah, Noah's grandpa. He lived to be 969 years, and then look at Jesus Christ, 33 years roughly. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or you're poor. In Luke 16, starting in verse 19, we read about the rich man and Lazarus, an excellent story for this lesson. The rich man had it made on earth. Let's just say he lived to be 100 years old. We don't know. But he had it made for those 100 years. But now he's spending eternity where he doesn't want to be. And if you asked him, he would much rather, and you know this from the story, he would much rather switch with Lazarus. So Lazarus didn't have it made. Let's say he lived to be 100. Lazarus is very, very happy, even right now, because of what he did. We're told in Matthew 16:26, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. We're told about, the verse says, what shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his own soul? We sing a song about that, very good song, and it's very truthful. Another verse, 1 Corinthians 1, verse 26, tells us that it doesn't matter if you're prominent, educated, or a very simple poor person, you have that an opportunity to go to heaven just as much as the prominent person does. Just because someone's prominent does not give them a one-way street right into heaven. In fact, the Bible teaches us the very rich people, if you love your money, it's very hard where you won't get to go to heaven. So you have to get your priorities in place. Two of my favorite verses, and it's so neat. John Ross taught me this a long time ago. John 15:14 and John 14:15 says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. That is what we have to do to be. We want to prove to God every day. So we'll have great things said about us at our funeral. We have to love God and keep his commandments. And his commandments are not burdensome, okay? But we've got to live our lives loving God and keeping his commandments so we can spend eternity in heaven. I want to read now Colossians chapter 3. Read a few verses. I love these verses. As I say that about a lot of verses, I know. But Colossians 3, verse 12. It says, therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, put on tender mercies, kindness, humility, meekness, long-suffering, bearing with one another and forgiving one another. If anyone has a complaint against another, even as Christ forgave you, so you also must do. But above all these things, put on love, which is the bond of perfection. And let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which also you were called in one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ, really listen closely here, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, in all wisdom, teaching, and admonishing one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. And whatever you do, in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord, giving thanks to God the Father through him. And then it goes on for some more really good verses too. But what I'm getting at here is, it's great. We want great things to be said about us. I think that's just human nature. But what really matters, the question we really need to ask ourselves is, what is God going to say? If he could talk at our funeral, and he could, but what would God say? What are you going to hear when you reach Judgment Day about your life here on this earth? So I have just a few verses I want to turn to for this, or just mention to you. Proverbs 15:3 says, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. Hebrews 4:13 says, and no creature is hidden from his sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give account. Proverbs 5:21 says, for a man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his paths. God knows everything. And I could turn to several other verses for this, but God knows everything. All right, and one more verse I want you to read with me, if you will, is Matthew chapter 25, 20 and 21. Matthew 25, 20 and 21. This is talking the talents. So he had received 5 talents. So he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Lord, you delivered to me 5 talents. Look, I have gained 5 more talents besides them. And here's verse 21 is what I want you to remember. His Lord said to him, well done, thou good and faithful servant. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. That's what we want God to say to us on Judgment Day, at our funeral. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of our Lord. I hope this has been a good lesson for you. I hope y'all have a great day, and I pray for all of you. I can't wait for us to all be back together again. Love you. Goodbye.